What happens when a government doesn't just control your actions, but claims dominion over your thoughts, memories, and even your perception of reality? Can a human spirit resist when every shred of truth is methodically erased and replaced with a lie? It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. The air was sharp, unforgiving, much like the world it enveloped. Winston Smith, small and frail against the towering machinery of oppression, slipped through the grimy halls of Victory Mansions, trying to escape both the wind and the invisible gaze of Big Brother. The pervasive smell of boiled cabbage clung to the air, as oppressive as the surveillance that weighed on every citizen of Oceania. Inside his dim apartment, the telescreen hummed, a constant reminder of the party's control. It watched, it listened, and it never slept. Winston's first rebellious act was as subtle as it was dangerous. A glance at the battered diary he had hidden in his belongings. To write in it was to invite death. To write the truth, however, was to invite annihilation. His hand trembled as he scribbled, "Down with Big Brother," over and over, the words igniting both fear and exhilaration. In these early moments, Orwell exposes the terrifying paradox of power. The party doesn't merely rule over Winston's body, it seeks to invade his mind. Thought itself is a battleground, and the party's war against individuality is unrelenting. The journal isn't just a book, it's a weapon, a fragile act of resistance that could shatter under the weight of the regime's surveillance. Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth was, perhaps, the cruelest irony of all. He rewrote history, erasing names, facts, and events to fit the party's narrative. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. This mantra wasn't just a slogan, it was the essence of the party's power. On any given day, Winston would receive orders to alter old newspaper articles, ensuring that past records aligned with the party's ever-shifting proclamations. Did Oceania ally with Eastasia or Eurasia last year? It didn't matter, the truth was whatever the party said it was, and all contradictory evidence was consigned to the memory hole, an incinerator for inconvenient facts. This manipulation of reality wasn't just a tool of governance, it was a method of control so absolute that even memory itself became unreliable. Winston's growing unease stemmed from a single horrifying realization. If all records could be falsified and all witnesses silenced, how could one trust their own recollections? Was there even such a thing as objective truth? Or was the party's version of reality the only truth that mattered? In this, Orwell poses a chilling question. What is reality if those in power can rewrite it at will? Winston's rebellion wasn't just against the party, but against the loss of his own mind. Yet, his struggle to remember, to hold on to something real, was already a dangerous act of defiance. Winston's life took a dramatic turn when he encountered Julia, a co-worker whose boldness and vitality stood in stark contrast to the gray, lifeless monotony of party-approved existence. At first, he distrusted her, believing her to be another agent of the party, a potential member of the thought police. But her simple gesture, a note passed in secret that read, "I love you," pierced through his paranoia and awoke something deeply human in him: hope. Julia was not an idealist. She didn't dream of overthrowing the party or changing the world. Her rebellion was personal, visceral. Through their secret meetings, they found solace in each other, defying the party in the only way they could. Their love became a quiet revolution, a flicker of humanity in a world stripped of warmth and joy. In a rented room above Mr. Charrington's shop, they built a fragile sanctuary filled with forbidden pleasures, real coffee, sugar, and whispered conversations. Yet, their love was steeped in futility. Winston, ever the pessimist, knew that their secret couldn't last. He understood the party's methods too well. Surveillance wasn't just technological, it was psychological. The party didn't just want submission, it demanded love and loyalty, extinguishing all competing bonds. Even love between individuals was a threat, because it created loyalties that rivaled devotion to Big Brother. Here, Orwell highlights a fundamental truth. Tyranny thrives not just by controlling the public sphere, but by invading the private one. The party's ultimate power wasn't its ability to punish, but its ability to make love and trust feel like dangerous, subversive acts. One figure loomed large in Winston's mind: O'Brien, a high-ranking party member whose cryptic behavior hinted at forbidden knowledge. Winston believed O'Brien was part of the Brotherhood, an underground resistance dedicated to overthrowing the party. This belief, however tenuous, became an obsession. O'Brien was more than a man. He was the embodiment of Winston's hope for truth and freedom. When O'Brien finally invited Winston to his luxurious apartment, it felt like stepping into another world. There, surrounded by comforts denied to the masses, O'Brien spoke openly of rebellion and handed Winston a copy of the book, the supposed manifesto of the Brotherhood. Written by the elusive Emmanuel Goldstein, the party's arch-enemy, the book explained the mechanics of the party's control. It detailed how the party used perpetual war, manufactured scarcity, and psychological manipulation to maintain its grip on power. The slogans, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength," were not contradictions but the very foundation of the party's philosophy. War created fear and unity. Freedom was redefined as submission. Ignorance of the truth ensured loyalty. Yet, even as Winston read these words, he felt no closer to liberation. The book answered the how, but not the why. Why did the party seek such absolute control? Why did it demand not just obedience, but love? These questions gnawed at Winston, even as his defiance seemed to grow stronger. But Winston's belief in the Brotherhood was a tragic delusion. O'Brien wasn't a rebel. He was the party's enforcer, its most skilled manipulator. The entire interaction was a trap, a meticulously planned ruse to expose Winston's dissent. In this moment, Orwell unravels Winston's fragile rebellion. The party doesn't just destroy its enemies, it uses their own hopes and dreams to do so. Rebellion isn't crushed from the outside, but hollowed out from within. The illusion of resistance becomes another tool of oppression. The betrayal came swift and unrelenting. Winston and Julia were seized in their sanctuary above Mr. Charrington's shop. The kindly old shopkeeper revealed himself to be an agent of the thought police, a reminder that in Oceania, trust was as dangerous as rebellion. Dragged to the Ministry of Love, Winston found himself in the heart of the party's machinery, a place not of love, but of terror. The Ministry of Love was a paradox in itself. Its purpose wasn't to kill dissenters, but to reforge them, to turn rebels into loyal, broken subjects who genuinely loved Big Brother. Death was not enough. The party demanded victory over the soul. Here, Winston faced the full weight of the party's power, and Orwell masterfully transforms his resistance from an external struggle to an internal torment. For days, or was it weeks, Winston endured torture that shattered the boundaries of pain. Physical suffering, however, was only a prelude to the true horror, the psychological destruction of self. O'Brien, Winston's former object of hope, emerged as his interrogator, embodying the party's ruthless intelligence. Calm, calculating, and unflinching, O'Brien explained the party's philosophy in chilling detail. "The party seeks power entirely for its own sake," O'Brien declared. "We are not interested in the good of others, we are interested solely in power. Power is not a means, it is an end. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power." This brutal honesty was the essence of the party's strength. Unlike tyrannies of the past, which claimed to serve some greater cause, religion, equality, or progress, the party made no such pretense. Its only goal was control, absolute and unyielding. Through O'Brien, Orwell dismantles the comforting illusion that authoritarian regimes might possess a rationale beyond their own perpetuation. Winston's resistance, already fragile, began to unravel under the weight of O'Brien's relentless psychological manipulation. The party didn't merely punish dissent, it rewired the mind itself. O'Brien forced Winston to accept the impossible. 2 + 2 = 5. It wasn't enough to say the words. Winston had to believe them. This was the ultimate act of domination, to strip away an individual's ability to perceive objective reality. By severing Winston's grasp on truth, the party obliterated his sense of self. Reality, as O'Brien explained, existed only in the mind of the party. If the party said 2 + 2 = 5, then it was true. If the party said Oceania had always been at war with Eastasia, then it had always been so. There was no truth, no fact, no reality outside the party's decree. Through these scenes, Orwell forces readers to confront a terrifying question. What happens when truth itself is corrupted? In a world where power defines reality, resistance becomes not just dangerous, but meaningless. Winston's battle was not just against O'Brien, but against the very fabric of his own mind. The climax of Winston's torment came in room 101, the place where every prisoner faced their worst fear. For Winston, it was rats, creatures so vile, so primal in their horror, that the thought of them drove him to madness. Strapped to a chair, a cage of ravenous rats positioned inches from his face, Winston reached his breaking point. In his terror, he screamed the words that would destroy the last vestige of his humanity. "Do it to Julia, not me. Tear her face off. Strip her to the bones, not me." In that moment, Winston's rebellion ended. He betrayed Julia, the one person he had sworn to love and protect. The party had succeeded, not just in breaking his body, but in destroying his soul. By weaponizing his deepest fear, they turned him into their willing subject. Orwell doesn't allow for any illusions here. Room 101 is not just a physical place, but a metaphor for the party's ultimate power, the ability to turn love into betrayal, hope into despair, and the human spirit into a hollow shell. Resistance was not simply futile, it was impossible. When Winston was finally released, he was no longer a man in any meaningful sense. He was a vessel, filled only with what the party had chosen to place within him. He spent his days drinking victory gin in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, staring blankly at a chessboard, his thoughts dulled by the party's relentless conditioning. The vibrant rebellion that once flickered within him was extinguished, replaced by a hollow acceptance of the party's reality. The final blow came in a moment of quiet realization. Staring at the telescreen, Winston felt a wave of emotion he hadn't experienced in years. He gazed at Big Brother's face, and for the first time, he felt something deeper than fear or hatred. He loved Big Brother. This ending is Orwell's ultimate tragedy. Winston's journey is not one of triumph, but of total annihilation. The party doesn't simply defeat its enemies, it erases them. By the novel's end, Winston is no longer capable of dissent, not because he is physically restrained, but because he has been mentally remade. Through Winston's fate, Orwell delivers a devastating critique of totalitarianism. It doesn't just crush opposition, it obliterates the very possibility of it. By controlling truth, rewriting history, and breaking the bonds of love and loyalty, the party ensures its eternal dominance. The tragedy of Winston's story doesn't lie solely in his personal failure, but in the broader implications of his defeat. Orwell uses Winston's transformation to ask a harrowing question. If the party can so thoroughly destroy one man's resistance, what hope is there for humanity as a whole? Winston's journey is a microcosm of a larger, more insidious process, a warning about the fragility of individual autonomy in the face of overwhelming systems of control. Winston's love for Big Brother at the end is not a moment of redemption, but one of ultimate despair. It signifies not reconciliation, but the obliteration of all that made him human. This love is manufactured, forced into existence through pain and terror, and yet, in that forced love lies the party's triumph. Orwell doesn't end the story with rebellion or hope, because to do so would undermine the terrifying plausibility of the world he's created. The message is clear. Under a regime that controls not only actions but thoughts and beliefs, resistance is not just dangerous, it is ultimately futile. The brilliance of Orwell's 1984 lies in how it explores the mechanics of power and the ways in which authoritarian systems maintain control. The party's rule isn't upheld by brute force alone, though its methods are certainly brutal. It's upheld through the systematic destruction of truth and the reshaping of reality itself. In a world where the party dictates what is true, there's no foundation for dissent. If history is rewritten, if words lose their meaning, and if even the most basic facts are malleable, then resistance becomes an act without context, a scream into the void. Orwell's concept of doublethink encapsulates this perfectly. The ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously is not just a skill demanded by the party, but a survival mechanism. Citizens must believe that Oceania is at war, and always has been at war with the same enemy. Even if that enemy changes overnight, they must believe that 2 + 2 = 5 when the party says it does, while also knowing it equals 4 when it suits them. Doublethink is not a failing of logic, but its perversion, an enforced mental state that ensures the party's dominance over both the external world and the internal mind. Winston's downfall also highlights the destruction of personal connections under totalitarianism. His relationship with Julia, though imperfect and steeped in their shared rebellion, represents a rare moment of human warmth and intimacy in a world designed to eradicate it. The party's hostility toward love and loyalty between individuals stems from its need to monopolize all affection and devotion. If citizens love each other, they cannot fully love Big Brother. Winston and Julia's betrayal of one another in Room 101 underscores the party's ability to destroy even the most fundamental human bonds. Under extreme pressure and fear, self-preservation overtakes love. This isn't a failure of character. It's the result of a system designed to exploit fear and reduce individuals to their basest instincts. Orwell's message here is as clear as it is bleak. No relationship, no matter how strong, can survive in a world where loyalty to the state is the only acceptable form of connection. Love, trust, and solidarity are threats to a regime that demands total control, and the party's triumph over Winston and Julia's relationship is the ultimate expression of its power. By the end of the novel, Winston's complete capitulation is framed not as an anomaly, but as an inevitability. The party's genius lies in its ability to make resistance impossible, not through sheer force alone, but by rewriting the terms of reality itself. In the world of 1984, there is no truth outside of what the party dictates. There are no shared facts, no stable history, no language with which to articulate dissent. Even the concept of rebellion is co-opted and controlled, as seen in the fabricated existence of the Brotherhood. The crushing inevitability of Winston's defeat serves as Orwell's final warning. When truth becomes a tool of power, and when language and history are manipulated to serve the needs of the state, freedom ceases to exist. In this context, the story of 1984 is not just the story of one man's struggle against tyranny, but a cautionary tale about the fragility of democracy and the dangers of complacency. Orwell doesn't give us an easy resolution or a glimmer of hope because his purpose isn't to reassure, it's to unsettle. Winston's story ends not with rebellion, but with submission, not with liberation, but with a chilling declaration of love for his oppressor. And in that submission lies Orwell's most haunting insight. A world where power is unchecked and truth is malleable is a world where freedom is impossible. The world of 1984 is frightening because it feels plausible. It warns of what can happen when societies sacrifice truth, individuality, and human connection in the name of power and control. Orwell's vision is extreme, but it is rooted in real dangers: the rise of propaganda, the manipulation of language, the erosion of privacy, and the willingness of people to trade freedom for security. In creating Winston Smith, Orwell gives us not just a victim of tyranny, but a mirror for our own vulnerabilities. His fate is a reminder that freedom, once lost, is nearly impossible to reclaim. The world Orwell crafts in 1984 is not just a dystopia for its citizens, but a psychological labyrinth for the reader, forcing us to confront unsettling truths about human nature and the structures of power. By the time Winston's story concludes, the reader has traversed a deeply personal journey, one that transforms from quiet rebellion to absolute annihilation of self. But Orwell doesn't end the novel in a vacuum. Every element of the party's control is a reflection of real-world mechanisms of oppression. One of the most striking aspects of the party's dominance is its manipulation of language through newspeak. This controlled vocabulary, designed to limit the range of thought, is perhaps the most insidious tool of the regime. By systematically erasing words that convey rebellion, complexity, or nuance, the party reduces the ability of its citizens to even conceive of resistance. If the word freedom ceases to exist, can the idea of freedom survive? Orwell's invention of newspeak is not just a literary device, but a chilling commentary on how language shapes reality. It is a reminder that control over words is control over thought. In the world of 1984, language is not a tool for communication, but a weapon for domination. And as the party simplifies and distorts language, it effectively narrows the scope of human experience. Even more terrifying is the realization that this process is not confined to fiction. Orwell's depiction of newspeak serves as a warning against any form of language manipulation, whether through censorship, propaganda, or the deliberate twisting of meaning. It asks us to consider the real-world implications of slogans, sound bites, and the erosion of critical discourse in political and social arenas. The party's use of surveillance is another cornerstone of its control. The omnipresent telescreens, the hidden microphones, and the constant fear of being watched create a society where privacy does not exist. Citizens are not just monitored, they are conditioned to monitor themselves. The fear of punishment becomes so deeply ingrained that even a fleeting thought against the party feels like a crime. This state of hypersurveillance cultivates an atmosphere of paranoia and isolation. Winston cannot fully trust anyone, not even Julia initially, and this lack of trust erodes the foundations of community and solidarity. The party's genius lies in its ability to make individuals complicit in their own oppression. By fostering an environment where every citizen is both a potential informer and a potential suspect, the party eliminates the possibility of collective resistance. Orwell's vision of surveillance is disturbingly prescient in today's world, where technology increasingly blurs the boundaries between public and private life. Social media, data tracking, and government surveillance programs echo the mechanisms of control Orwell describes. While our world is not Oceania, the parallels serve as a stark reminder of how easily privacy can be eroded, and how critical it is to guard against encroachments on personal freedom. But what may be the most profound element of 1984 is its exploration of psychological control. The party's ultimate goal is not simply to suppress rebellion, but to shape thought itself. Through methods like torture, propaganda, and re-education, it doesn't just enforce obedience, it seeks to rewrite the very nature of reality. This is epitomized in O'Brien's interrogation of Winston, where the party's philosophy is laid bare. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else, not in the individual mind, which can make mistakes and soon perishes, only in the mind of the party, which is collective and immortal. In these words, Orwell reveals the terrifying core of totalitarianism, the ability to dictate not just what people do, but what they believe to be true. The party doesn't simply want power over actions, it seeks power over thoughts, memories, and perceptions. It seeks to control the past, the present, and the future by ensuring that truth itself becomes fluid, defined only by those in power. Winston's torture and eventual reprogramming are not acts of punishment, but acts of creation. The party breaks him down, stripping away every layer of individuality until he becomes a blank slate onto which they can inscribe their truth. This transformation is Orwell's bleakest commentary on the fragility of human resistance. If even Winston, with his desperate yearning for freedom, can be turned into a loyal subject of the party, what hope is there for anyone else? As the novel concludes, Winston's love for Big Brother marks the ultimate victory of the party. It is a victory not just over one man, but over the idea of human dignity itself. Orwell leaves us with an image of a world where truth has no meaning, where love has been corrupted, and where resistance is not merely futile, but unimaginable. The tragedy of Winston's fate is not just that he is defeated, but that he is utterly transformed. The man who once wrote "Down with Big Brother" in his secret diary is gone, replaced by someone who genuinely believes that 2 + 2 = 5. In this, Orwell forces the reader to confront the darkest implications of his vision, a world where the human spirit can be so thoroughly crushed that it becomes unrecognizable. Yet, as bleak as 1984 is, it serves as a vital warning. Orwell doesn't offer solutions or hope because that is not the purpose of the novel. Instead, he forces us to ask difficult questions about the nature of power, the importance of truth, and the ways in which societies can safeguard or lose their freedoms. The haunting end of 1984 leaves an indelible impression. Winston's transformation from a defiant rebel into a devoted follower of Big Brother serves as the ultimate testament to the party's omnipotence. By the time the novel concludes, Orwell's world has fully enveloped the reader in its cold logic of control and submission. However, as the reader reflects on Winston's journey, the intricacies of the party's methods and their devastating effectiveness demand closer scrutiny. One of the most subtle yet powerful mechanisms of control lies in the party's manipulation of memory. Through the Ministry of Truth, the party doesn't just rewrite records of the past, it redefines what the past even means. Historical events are erased or altered to suit the party's narrative, and because the truth exists only in the minds of people, the party essentially annihilates reality by reshaping collective memory. Consider Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth. His task is to alter newspaper articles, speeches, and records to reflect the party's current version of events. If Oceania is suddenly at war with Eastasia instead of Eurasia, Winston rewrites history to make it appear that Eastasia has always been the enemy. This is not just revisionism. It's a form of psychological warfare against reality itself. The party doesn't merely suppress dissent. It eliminates the possibility of dissent by ensuring that no alternative truth exists. Through this, Orwell explores the fragility of history and memory. If the past can be rewritten, what anchors our understanding of the present? What becomes of the future when it is built on falsified foundations? Winston's struggle against this manipulation reflects a deeper human need to cling to objective truth, but his eventual defeat signals the terrifying power of systems that can obliterate even the concept of objective reality. Orwell also forces us to examine the cost of conformity. In the world of 1984, individuality is dangerous. To have personal desires, to form independent relationships, or to think critically is to risk annihilation. The party thrives on uniformity, and its success lies in its ability to suppress the individual in favor of the collective. Through Winston, Orwell reveals the psychological toll of living in such a system. Early in the novel, Winston's private rebellion, his journal, his illicit relationship with Julia, his dreams of resistance, represents his attempt to reclaim his individuality. These acts, though small and ultimately futile, are deeply human. They reflect his yearning for connection, for freedom, and for a sense of self outside the party's reach. However, these very traits mark him as a target. In Oceania, to think, to love, to question, is to place oneself in direct opposition to the state. This tension between individuality and conformity resonates far beyond the pages of the novel. Orwell's portrayal of Winston's rebellion highlights the inherent fragility of the individual in the face of collective systems. It raises uncomfortable questions. What happens when society demands total conformity? How much of our humanity are we willing to sacrifice for the sake of survival? Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the party's power lies in its ability to instill fear as a means of control. In Room 101, the horrors Winston faces are not random. They are deeply personal, tailored to his greatest fear. By exploiting this fear, the party doesn't just break Winston physically, it breaks him psychologically. Room 101 is not merely a torture chamber, but the ultimate expression of the party's understanding of human nature. Fear, Orwell suggests, is the most potent weapon in the arsenal of authoritarian regimes. It overrides reason, undermines loyalty, and reduces individuals to their most vulnerable states. Winston's betrayal of Julia in Room 101 is not just a failure of courage, it is a calculated outcome engineered by the party. By turning Winston's own mind against him, the party ensures that no bond, no belief, no principle is stronger than its power. This is where Orwell's critique becomes most poignant. Totalitarian systems do not just demand obedience, they cultivate fear to the point where resistance becomes unthinkable. The reader is left to grapple with the implications of this. What happens to humanity when fear becomes the primary driver of behavior? What remains of the self when even love and loyalty are no match for terror? Winston's eventual acceptance of the party's truth, his belief that 2 + 2 = 5, his love for Big Brother, is the culmination of this systematic destruction. His transformation is not a moment of clarity or peace, but the final act of annihilation. By forcing Winston to internalize the party's reality, the party doesn't just win. It ensures that there is no possibility of future rebellion. Winston's love for Big Brother is not just a betrayal of his former self. It is the erasure of that self entirely. Orwell's vision is unflinching in its bleakness. There is no last-minute rescue, no heroic act of defiance, no glimmer of hope to reassure the reader. Instead, we are left with the stark reality of the party's victory and the utter futility of resistance in a system designed to extinguish it. Yet, within this bleakness lies Orwell's genius. By painting such a harrowing picture, he forces us to confront the dangers of unchecked power and the fragility of freedom. The novel's conclusion leaves us with more questions than answers. Can humanity ever overcome the allure of authoritarian control? How do we protect truth in a world where it can be manipulated and erased? And perhaps most importantly, What does it mean to truly be free? These questions linger long after the final page, challenging readers to reflect on their own societies and the forces that shape them. The world of 1984 ends not in explosive rebellion, but in quiet submission, a whisper of triumph for the party that echoes louder than any battle cry. This is perhaps Orwell's most masterful and most chilling achievement. The story's conclusion isn't a resolution, but a reflection of the true stakes of a totalitarian system, the complete and irreversible obliteration of individuality, free will, and the very concept of resistance. As Winston sits in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, drinking victory gin and absently following the party's propaganda broadcasts, his transformation is complete. His thoughts are no longer his own. His memories have been rewritten or erased. The image of his final capitulation, his unshakable love for Big Brother, is the grim punctuation mark to a life that once held glimmers of defiance. In the context of the party's omnipotence, Winston's personal tragedy is magnified. He is not merely defeated, but reprogrammed, his inner self molded into a tool of the very system he sought to escape. The party's mechanisms of control extend beyond physical oppression or even mental conditioning. They infiltrate the very fabric of reality. This is exemplified in the party's slogan: "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." These contradictions are not just propaganda, they are the foundations of the party's philosophy. They force the citizens of Oceania to accept doublethink as a way of life, to believe and disbelieve simultaneously, and to surrender their capacity for critical thinking. The slogans function as psychological weapons, fracturing the logical mind and replacing it with blind acceptance. Orwell's insight into the power of language is at the heart of these slogans. By distorting language, the party eliminates the possibility of dissent. When war is peace, when freedom is slavery, the very meanings of these concepts become fluid, dictated solely by the party. This manipulation of language is not confined to slogans. It permeates the society's entire lexicon. Newspeak erodes the possibility of rebellion by making it literally unthinkable. As the language to articulate dissent is systematically erased, the implications of this are far-reaching. Orwell's warning about the relationship between language and thought resonates today. As societies grapple with the effects of propaganda, misinformation, and the deliberate erosion of truth. When words lose their meaning, when facts become negotiable, the ability to challenge authority is severely diminished. In Winston's world, the destruction of language is the destruction of freedom. And in our own world, Orwell's lesson is clear. The defense of language is the defense of liberty. The psychological devastation wrought by the party reaches its peak in Winston's torture and reprogramming at the hands of O'Brien. This is not just physical pain, though the descriptions of Room 101 are harrowing. It is the systematic dismantling of Winston's identity and beliefs. Through relentless interrogation, the party turns Winston's mind into a battleground, and then ensures that it loses. O'Brien's chilling assertion that reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else reveals the party's ultimate aim: the domination of not just the body, but the very essence of reality itself. If the party controls perception, then it controls everything. Winston's eventual acceptance that 2 + 2 = 5 is not merely a concession, it is the final victory of the party's power over the individual. Orwell forces the reader to confront the horrifying implications of this. If reality can be shaped by those in power, then truth itself becomes meaningless. The relationship between O'Brien and Winston is particularly disturbing because it is built on a paradoxical intimacy. O'Brien presents himself as both torturer and mentor, destroying Winston while also teaching him the principles of the party's worldview. This twisted relationship underscores the party's genius in its methods of control. It doesn't merely seek to suppress its enemies, it seeks to convert them, to make them love the very system that oppresses them. The erasure of love and loyalty is another of the party's triumphs, exemplified in Winston's relationship with Julia. Their bond, though initially driven by rebellion and lust, becomes a symbol of resistance against the party's dehumanizing control. But even this connection is ultimately broken. In Room 101, Winston and Julia both betray each other, sacrificing love and trust in the face of their deepest fears. This betrayal is not merely a plot point, it is a commentary on the fragility of human relationships under oppressive regimes. Orwell suggests that totalitarianism thrives by isolating individuals, severing the bonds that give people strength and solidarity. In Oceania, love is not just discouraged, it is weaponized, turned into a vulnerability that the party can exploit. By the end of the novel, even Winston and Julia's shared hatred of the party has evaporated. Their brief reunion is marked not by hope or defiance, but by mutual emptiness. They are no longer the people they once were. The party has hollowed them out and replaced them with loyal, broken subjects. This loss of love, and of humanity itself, is one of the most devastating aspects of Orwell's vision. Ultimately, Orwell's 1984 serves as a stark warning about the dangers of authoritarianism, but its power lies in its specificity. Orwell doesn't rely on abstract fears. He meticulously constructs a world where every detail, the language, the surveillance, the propaganda, is designed to serve the party's absolute control. The result is a society where resistance is not just difficult, but nearly inconceivable, where even the most basic truths are subject to the whims of power. Through Winston's story, Orwell forces the reader to grapple with uncomfortable truths about the nature of power, the fragility of freedom, and the limits of human resilience. The novel does not offer solutions or easy answers, but it leaves an indelible impression. The questions it raises about truth, control, and the meaning of resistance are as urgent today as they were when Orwell first put pen to paper. If 1984 teaches us anything, it is that vigilance is the price of freedom. In a world where truth can be manipulated and power can corrupt, Orwell's warning is as relevant now as ever. The struggle for freedom is not just a battle against external forces, but a battle within ourselves, to think critically, to question authority, and to protect the fragile, beautiful essence of what it means to be human.